to everyone.
Definitely. Hi, everybody. My name is Simrah. I'm currently a junior at the University of Illinois at Chicago, also based in Chicago. And I'm currently majoring in computer science. And product management is my dream career. And hopefully I can score a full-time this upcoming recruiting year.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think a lot of you may be in the same shoe as Simrah, and Simrah's dream company to break in is Google. So, hi everyone, I'm Iris. I'm currently a PM at Google X, and I really enjoy mocking other people with product questions because it's always kind of sparks my own creativity to learn from others as well. And yeah, outside of work, I also have my own startup called Nutrify, where we kind of focus on food sustainability. So build a bunch of social impact products before coming here. And yeah, so for the mock today, we are gonna explore an interesting question, which basically will be me mocking Simrah for the next, I'll say 25 to 30 minutes. And then I'll give feedback for everyone else. And feel free to chime in questions or prepare any questions you have, either about an interview or about product interviews in general at the end, and we'll do the Q&A. Okay, let's get started. So the question is, this is a fun question, and it's used by a past Google interview. How would you design a product that increases the consumption of fruit in the US?
Okay, so we're trying to design a product that increases the consumption of fruit in the US, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you know, fruit life makes you healthier.
100%.
So why not?
Yeah, okay, so I do have some clarifying questions just by hearing this question. When we're talking about fruit, it doesn't matter what form it's in, fresh fruit, frozen fruits, the type of fruit, or no, just fruit in general?
I think we will focus on fresh fruit.
Fresh fruit, okay, awesome. And when we're talking about increasing fruit consumption, do we have a certain amount of percentage in mind, by a huge amount or just a quantity, or no, just in general?
Let's say we want to do the Google scale kind of difference. So
okay. Moonshot?
Not necessarily moonshot, but like, you know, a difference, make a difference.
Make yeah. Awesome. Okay, sounds great. Difference. And do we have any time or resource constraints that I should be aware of?
I guess no time constraint resource-wise. As long as you can persuade your VP to give you a budget, you're fine. So
that sounds great. So now that I've basically asked some of the clarifying questions, I do want to lay out a basic structure so you know what basic points that I'm going to hit. So first, I guess we can go over the goal and figure out, I guess, who's designing this, what other things do we want to look at, and then figure out who exactly are we designing this product for, a specific user group, figure out what are their user needs and pain points, and then get into solutions. And of course, if we have time, look into trade-offs and metrics. How does that sound?
Sounds perfect.
Okay, awesome. So who is designing this product? Is it a big tech company? Is it a startup? Or does that not really matter?
Let's just say Google is designing it.
Okay. So Google is designing this product. So I guess when you said that, something that came into my mind is that Google's mission is to organize the world's information. And I guess the reason why they may be wanting to creating a product like this is they do design for inclusivity and also just, building a better future for everybody out there. So, and I think that obviously food consumption does relate back to, healthy, and basically if you're healthy, it relates back to the future generation and the upcoming generations as well. So I feel like the goal was very well set in the question itself, increasing food consumption. But besides that, is there anything else that you want me to keep in mind?
So I guess we want to focus, besides from what you said, we want to make sure how we can coverage as many people as possible.
Okay, so definitely looking at customer acquisition as well in terms of numbers. Okay, awesome. Great. So Now I guess it's time to figure out who exactly we want to hone in on because we can't solve it for everybody. So I'm going to take a quick moment to just think about that. Is that okay?
Yeah, take your time.
Awesome.
And for the audience, if you want to do this with Simrah, feel free to take out your pen and paper. Imagine if you're the one solving this question, how would you do it? It doesn't have to be physical.
Awesome. So I guess just thinking about user group, two main subsections basically came into my mind. And the first one was just thinking about, okay, when we're talking about fruits, when I think the first thing that came into my mind was maybe we could bucket it based upon, do they like fruit? Do they not like fruit? And maybe they're okay-ish. And then I actually thought of a couple of different like main user groups, like categories. And the first one I thought of was kids. The next one was perhaps grocery stores, because you can also look at this as, grocery stores selling more fruits. And then maybe just health enthusiasts that are out there who want to maintain a better healthy diet, and they're just getting started and they want to figure out how to incorporate fruit in their diet and leave snacking. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to quickly pick one and then we can move on to the other sections. Is that okay?
Yeah, as long as you explain why one over the other.
Sounds great. So for I'm going to pick my user group based on impact and also market size. So just looking at these three user groups, I do want to go with kids, and I want to go with kids who don't really like eating fruits. They're very finicky, and perhaps around the ages of, let's say, 5 and like 3 to 5, they've kind of just understood what it is. And the reason that I want to go with this user group is because I feel that the impact is going to be really, really big. Impact for me is being able to definitely tying it back to our goal of making sure it's reaching out, increasing food consumption as many people as possible. And I feel that when you look at kids are probably the most pickiest eaters who are out there. And parents are always like, parents could definitely fall into this category as well, because they're always trying to figure out how can we make our kids eat more healthier. And obviously they do say that if you want to build up habits, it's better that you start when they're a lot younger versus when they're older, because it's better and they just get used to it. And that market size aspect is also there that I just kind of mentioned, that parents do want to figure out, instead of scrolling through a bunch of YouTube videos and spending hours on the internet just figuring out how can I make sure that my child is eating this fruit. I think it would be really nice to focus on this user group and create a product that can definitely help children. How does that sound?
Yeah. So you mentioned impact, market size as your criteria. I guess what makes you think that kids would be the higher market size, or in terms of their impact on their life?
Right. So I think based on impact in their life, it's just being able to build up that habit from when they're a lot younger. And obviously when you start them small, their fruit consumption is just going to increase as they get older, because as you get older, your diet changes, the amount of food that you can consume increases. So if you kind of train them from when they're younger that, oh, you have to have a fruit-filled diet, and the amount of fruit that you eat perhaps compared to junk food is greater, that's going to be in their mind. And I feel that with fruit, if you keep eating fruit, your body kind of naturally just rejects sugar or a lot of artificial things. So as you get older, that's basically primarily what you eat.
Okay, sounds good. You can move on.
Great. So now that we've narrowed down and picked a user group, I guess our next section is figuring out what are children's user needs, and also looking into pain points and how can we cater a product that we're creating more better to them. So for that case, I'm going to take a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds to just think about what these are. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome.
And to answer Kelvin's question, it is pretty normal. I think usually you can take a long pause up to like a minute or two. I think that's like as long as you could take before it gets too awkward. But I think it's totally fine if you want to take some time. And again, everyone else, start brainstorming. What would you say?
Okay, so I do have a couple of pain points, and just thinking about kids who are 3 to 5 in general, I feel that when they're at that age where they're basically at that age where they've been exposed to sugary things and a lot of other alternatives that may seem a lot more attractive to them. So I feel that one of the main the pain points for them is that I'm tired of eating fruits. I don't want to eat it anymore. I want something new. It always looks the same. So something that's a user need that we could potentially focus on. And the next one is being able to cut and peel the fruits in general. It takes a lot of time versus the snacks that they may just get. It's usually in wrappers, they just open it. But with fruits, it's like the peels, they want it cut in certain shapes, they want it in certain sizes. And just depending upon like that age 3 to 5 as well, need to be able to swallow it as well. So that's another user need that I potentially thought of. And finally, the last pain point that I thought of is that when looking at children and when looking at fruits in general, another pain point is that, again, the aspect of they don't want to eat it if it's not in that prime condition of, like if it's not perfect, like if it has a spot or if it has something else on it, or if it's a bit, like if you take a banana, for example, if it's a bit brown, they're not going to touch it at all. They're just going to be like, oh, it's not in perfect condition, I don't want it. So they're pretty picky. So that's another user need that we could potentially focus on. So out of these 3 pain points, the pain point that I think is really, really important, and the way that I'm picking this is based upon just impact and just our user group in general, is definitely that the first pain point that I mentioned is I'm tired of it. I don't want to eat it. I want something new. What can I do? Like, I just don't want to look at it. So I think, and the reason that I think this is the most important one is that children from 3 to 5, again, they get really bored. They want that new aspect. They're always really curious, and it's like feeding children their vegetables, and they don't like it unless you create something new out of it. So I think that this would be a really interesting use case to focus on. How does that sound?
So you're gonna focus on the first one, that kids are gonna get bored of eating fruit.
Yeah, basically the appealing aspect. How can we make it a bit more appealing to them? How can we make it more interesting to them to make sure that they're eating fruit?
Okay. How do you think that will be able to maximize the impact?
Yeah, I think it would be able to maximize the impact because we're trying to increase food consumption. And just looking at a child's psychology, when they like something, they usually the way they work is that when they like something, they use it. They use it and they use it and they use it. But that the 1 minute where they're kind of bored of it, they're like, oh, like I don't want it anymore. Like if you give them a toy. But if you give them the same toy in a different color, again, it's like that new shiny thing for them and they start using it again and again. So it's like that surprise factor, that wow factor. It's like keeping them engaged with the fruit, the item, because at the end of the day, they're still gonna come down for snack time and be like, I'm hungry, I want to eat, or like just in between, they're always snacking and I'm hungry. But if they see the same thing, they're not gonna want it. So I feel like by focusing on this pain point, it's an easy way for parents or even children to be able to maximize the usage of the fruit and definitely experiment with how can we make this more appealing to a child.
Okay, sounds good. I think Kevin also has a question for you, which I totally agree. So in this case, we have a different user versus customer. Like the customer are the parents who are going to be buying the product, whereas the user is the kids. So what's your thought on having to convince two users?
Right. Yeah, I should have actually mentioned this a bit earlier. I think I did mention it briefly, just like I said the name. But when it comes to parents, I feel that again, a parent's primary concern is that when they go snack shopping or when they go like grocery shopping, it's about okay, what are gonna fulfill my child's snack requirements? And also, children between 3 to 5, they regularly visit the pediatric doctor, and the pediatric doctor usually tells them that, oh, your child needs to eat this amount of fruit, this percentage of fruit every day in order to grow a specific height, in order to stay healthy. So parents are kind of running around figuring out how can they meet that requirement. So I think just from that perspective, when we're focusing on this pain point, again, it definitely correlates back to that and solves the parents' problem of how can I make my child eat fruit, but make sure that they're enjoying it and not hiding it or throwing it away or just like leaving it half finished.
Okay, sounds good. You can move on.
Awesome. So I guess I'm gonna take a quick minute to think about some potential solutions, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Okay, so I do have a couple of solutions. The first solution that I have is it's called Cook with Me. And what Cook with Me is that it's basically like a sort of cookbook type app that is very engaging with the child, and the parent can definitely be involved as well, in which they have a bunch of different recipes or snacks that they can create with a variety of different fruit. And the more complex or the more fruit they use in their recipe, they're able to gain points. And obviously with these points, they can be translated into rewards such as, let's say they want more TV time, or they want more, they want a certain toy, then they can definitely be used for that. The next one that I have is Tellini. So what Tellini is that usually kids who are 3 to 5, they usually they're very they watch a lot of cartoons and TV shows. So basically, this is a way where it's basically a way in which these children, they can definitely, based on their favorite TV shows, they can either get the snacks that their favorite TV characters are either eating, or definitely that they're perhaps having, is they can easily be customized, and they can get perhaps kits based upon their TV shows. So that's a solution that I have. And the next solution that I do have is it's more of, I don't have a name for this because I don't know, I couldn't think of one, but I guess it would be really nice to, it's more of like a miniature garden. And I think that when kids really understand where fruits are coming from, and it would be really nice for them to figure out the entire process, and then, oh, I grew this by myself, now I want to eat it, and just like maybe a mini garden that stimulates the entire environment, and they can definitely grow their own fruits and eat them or do whatever they want with them. So those are the 3 solutions that I do have. Before I do pick one, is there a specific one that you want me to elaborate on?
So, I think you can choose one based on your metric.
Okay, so I guess our goal was, again, just increasing fruit consumption and gaining customer acquisition as well. And when I think about picking a solution, 2 things that are really important for me is impact, which I've used throughout the solution, but also uniqueness, because being able to design a product which is very, very unique and our competitors can't come up with is something that I feel that's really important. And I think out of these, definitely a solution that would be interesting to develop would be the first solution that I came up with, being able to help children, the cookbook app. So Cook with Me, definitely being able to create your own snacks and gain points and rewards as well. So again, within the uniqueness factor, I would say medium. It is something that can easily be, definitely companies can do it, or they can create something similar, but maybe just combining it a bit with the second solution as well, with their favorite TV shows and programs, and just adding their main characters, or just characterizing it itself so that it's a bit more appealing to these users, to the children and the parents as well. And again, another reason why I went with the solution is because just based on the other 2, I feel that with effort, it's a bit more easier as well, and something that's technologically easily manageable between the student, between the children and the parents as well, because we don't know how technologically advanced they are. We want something that's simple and easy to use for them, to such an extent where they're not getting frustrated and be like, oh, it's not working, I don't want to do this anymore. So I do want to go with the first solution, which is Cook with Me.
You said you want to combine the 2, right? The first and second?
Yeah, so like certain aspects, just the aspect of the TV show character. So just characterizing the cookbook recipes based upon their favorite TV show characters.
Okay. So, but then if you were to choose between the 2, how would you prioritize?
Yeah, so I think prioritization, it's not as if I'm implementing the entire that second set of solution where it was more upon we're giving them personalized kits. I think we're just drawing that aspect of TV show characters, and perhaps like within the Cook with Me app, just like, oh, this recipe that you want to make is by your favorite character or something like that. But definitely, I think if you in terms of the way that I would want to perhaps execute the features, then definitely just make sure that the app is launched first, the Cook with Me app, and making sure that all the functionalities are there, that they're able to have a good time, that they're able to collect points and definitely translate those points. And then later on in later iterations, we could definitely do some A/B testing, and we can see are we having engagement issues? Do we want children to be more engaged? And then from that perspective, we can definitely add more of like their TV show characters and take surveys up on which characters are most popular.
Okay, cool. So what will be your next step for trying to implement the solution?
Yeah, so I think the next step is that now that we have the base idea, it's definitely just analyzing some trade-offs and thinking about, again, just doing A/B testing to see if, is this just, and testing the hypothesis of, are parents going to use this? Is this actually going to help children increase food consumption? And just doing an A/B testing based on that. And also some trade-offs that I do see are that when using a cookbook type app and when children are cooking, parents can't always supervise them in such a way. So that is a trade-off that I see, because sometimes you need to be able to cut things. You need to be able to, parents need to make sure it's not getting all messy or all dirty. So that is one trade-off that I do see. And also just making sure that, again, something that we did talk about is that children do get bored really easily. So making sure that the app is continuously updated and that they have enough recipes to continually experiment and perhaps find their favorite ones.
So do you think that kids are going to use the app or the parents will?
So when just thinking about that, I feel like these days, 3 to 5, like kids between 3 to 5, they're very technologically advanced. They know how everything works. I'm pretty sure if you have younger siblings or just younger cousins in general, they basically know how everything works. So I feel that parents usually, when they give their children tablets or phones, there's usually a child lock on it or certain apps that are available. So maybe within, if they want to create a snack, then they can easily go to their parents and be like, hey, I want to create this, and just have that free time of being able to plan for the next days and be like, just build up that excitement that, oh, I made this today, I want to make this tomorrow, I want to make this on the next day, this is my favorite, I want to eat this in the afternoon. So just giving them that flexibility to play around with it.
Okay, cool. What are some metrics you use to evaluate a success?
Right, so for metrics, I'm gonna take a moment to think about that just to make sure I'm hitting the right ones. Is that okay?
For sure, go ahead. And for everyone else, notice how Simrah always take time to think. I think it's really important for you to pause, to have a structure before answering each one of the question. And it's okay, like she took pause for each one of the question, which I think is better than just going ahead and not having a structure.
Right. So I think engagement is definitely a #1 metric that we could use. And within engagement, I think that some sub metrics that we can track is that one of the points was children being able to gain points. So just seeing how many points are they gaining on a weekly basis, and is that amount increasing, is that amount decreasing, is it steady, is a good metric that we can track. And another one is just the overall, just how long are they spending, like how many times are they opening the app in a week, and just the amount of time that they're spending on an app is another metric. And finally, I think the last metric that I would track is definitely NPS scores, and just Net Promoter Scores is always a really important aspect to track, especially when you're looking at products like apps and making sure that people are actually using it and the word is spreading. So these are the 3 metrics that I would track.
Okay. So you said engagement, you would track it based on how many points people gain, or?
Yeah, so the #1 would be how many points that they're gaining on a weekly basis. So every single week, how many points did they have? And then on a weekly basis, how many times do they actually look at the app and like open the app and create, like just make a recipe? And finally, just looking at Net Promoter Scores.
Okay, cool. Do you see any trade-offs? I mean, you kind of mentioned trade-offs before, but what are some potential risks for the app?
Yeah, so I think some risks for the app would definitely be like if a competitor just came and just made a better one, because there's a variety of different ways when you're targeting children. There's a variety of different ways that you can make things engaging for them, and obviously I feel like that's a threat. And another threat is the recipes, because I feel that you need to be, every child's like preference is very, very different, and just based upon like the households or cultures that they've grown up with. So if all of the fruit recipes or all of the recipes in the cookbook are based upon one type of culture or one type of area, not all children would perhaps like it or would be comfortable with it. And another thing is just making sure that you have the fruit in your house that you want to create the recipe for. Let's say a child is like, oh, I want to create this, but they don't really have that fruit in the house on that specific day, then that could lead to a huge tantrum and just, you know, make them be like, oh, like, I don't want to eat fruits anymore. I don't want to use this app anymore, and make them really demotivated.
Okay, I'm back. My internet's not very stable. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So do you know what part you heard until?
Let's start from the beginning for the rest.
Beginning, okay. Wait, let me just think again what I said. Yeah, so what I said was, I think one just like threat would be, again, like when children are growing up, I feel that substantially depending upon the culture or the household that you grow up within, there's a variety of different recipes. You have a different sort of taste, and it's an acquired taste. Like everybody has a very acquired taste. So just making sure that this app is like covering that entire spectrum, and just instead of just having recipes of a certain type or a certain certain culture is something that we want to avoid. And another thing is, what if a child is like, oh, I want to make this, and they go to their parent, and the parent's like, oh, sorry, this fruit is only seasonal, or this fruit we don't really have it in today. We don't want them to throw a fit and be like, oh, I don't want to use this app anymore, I don't want to eat fruits anymore, and throw a tantrum.
Did we lose Iris?
I think so. I'm reading your question. No problem.
Let's give her 30 seconds and then
Okay.
I want to hot swap a new interviewer.
Yeah.
Who's on the
Kevin or we can swap in.
I think I see a blank screen that could be Iris.
Kevin, you could ask questions. I can take notes and then paste it in the oh, never mind. Iris is back.
So sorry, my internet is just not cooperating. And so I guess we can go into the feedback.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so first of all, really great structure, starting off with an overview, which let me know what to expect coming on. And I think you definitely spend a lot of time. I mean, I'm your mentor, so I know about like how much time you spend practicing, so really great work on that. And okay, now going into the constructive feedback. I think market size, you use market size for one of the metric for the user group on choosing kids. And I don't think it would be a good metric unless you know the population breakdown, because it's hard to say, like for market size that is pure number based. I probably don't think kids are the most populated population in terms of that population breakdown. So maybe unless you know that this population is actually the majority of the crowd, don't use market size.
Okay.
And you also use I mean, I like that you mentioned like fruit versus not like versus okay with fruit. You kind of forgot about that, which is fine. I think, but it was something cool to mention. But I guess you could probably say like kids who don't like food, or kids who are okay with, like, yeah.
Got it.
And I think for choosing which direction to go with, you did ask me like which solution I want to focus on, and I gave the choice back to you. But I think it would be helpful if you could ask the interviewer about other things as well. Like, is there a pain point that you would prefer to tackle on? And sometimes interviewers do have preference, like they would think that, okay, this one's more important, so they want you to tackle on one over the other. So you can check in with me a bit more often. And I think you for identifying, like, yeah, like what Kevin asked about, if you could identify that when the user and customer are different and that you want to align both groups' interests for buying this product, then I think that will be good. And when you were explaining like which user pain point to choose, you mentioned the appealing and interesting one because it has a higher impact. And I guess it would be helpful if you use some metric for explaining what kind of impact you're talking about. For example, because the fruits look more interesting, this would increase user acquisition, this would increase retention, or some kind of metrics to kind of like justify for what that impact means. And yeah, I love that you gave names for the solutions. And to answer the question in the chat, name is not the most important thing, but I think it makes you stand out a little bit and make your solution seem a bit more creative. People love hearing about good names. So yeah, that was great. And I do think for the three solutions you came up with, they could be a little bit more creative. I think for the cookbook recipe, this one definitely exists. I think a lot of market are doing it. But then if you are aware that this is a competitive market, maybe you can address on your own competitive advantage on, like, I know there's a lot of cookbook recipe out there, but not a lot of them are focused on kids, or not every one of them focus on like TV characters. So maybe because people will be thinking about it, they'll be thinking, okay, it's not that special, but to make it look special, you can kind of address what they're thinking by mentioning this is our competitive advantage and why we're different. And lastly, I think you could leverage a little bit more on Google's strength in terms of AI and machine learning, kind of on the software side of things. And I mean, this is not necessary, honestly. A lot of time you don't have to mention Google in this case. It's just that I mentioned that we are Google and we're creating this product. So if you want, you could say, we could integrate this into like Pixel or integrate this into a certain Google product and help them to increase their own user acquisition in the kids segments. So just to make it look more together. But I think overall you did a really great job, and most of the structure makes sense and the metrics make sense. But yeah, I guess one more thing is just for the criteria, you could probably try to use like 3 criteria for every selection for, yeah, choosing the pain point, choosing the solution. So yeah, any question from you?
I do not, but thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, but honestly, that was great. Yeah, and kudos for you to being our first mentee at Edith Fellowship for volunteering and being critiqued by everyone. Like, this is amazing. Awesome. So let's see some audience questions, and feel free to drop your question in the chat or raise your hands. Is there an advantage of thinking out loud versus silent pause, or is it better to have defined pause before saying anything at all? I think you can do either way. Actually, I like to think out loud. Usually, I would say like, okay, so let me just write this down, and then I started talking about things that I'm writing. But then I don't think it matters a lot, or if you guys are sharing screen and you can write things on your screen and then the other party can see, so that they're not too bored. But I think silent and then saying it afterwards work too. Next question, what part of the app is revenue generating? Actually, I'll let Sid go first since he has his hands up.
Thanks. First, I want to say that that was really awesome. And I also want to preface what I have to say with the fact that this is kind of the first PM interview I've ever seen. So I apologize for asking very noob questions. But yeah, you know, I want to understand this better. But yeah, I guess I have one question for now. And that is, there were a number of assumptions that were made about, you know, the customer and customer behavior and stuff like that. And I'm curious as to how one can sort of, this interview is obviously like, you've not come in with any research or any understanding of like the industry or space. To what extent can you kind of make assumptions like that, or how can you clarify that your assumptions are good enough to kind of build off of for the interview? Yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think assumption is a huge part of every kind of product design interview. You're designing based on what you know of human behaviors. And I think it's good if you can mention assumptions upfront, and you don't really have to know too much about the industry itself. Like everyone eats fruit, right? So it's not like a super niche, like technical domain that no one knows about. So, and I don't think anyone would expect you to know very deep about whatever product they ask you to design. And one good way you can leverage your personal experience is really by talking about what you're like about. So you can like mention a personal story, like for myself, I really don't like eating fruits when I was a kid, and my mom tried to do this and it didn't work. So I wish I had this kind of solution. So kind of like mentioning what your pain point was as a kid, or like as in terms of other segments that you might choose, that would make it more convincing and also make it more personable.
Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions? I see a question from Chan. Should the interviewer and the interviewee set an arbitrary pricing model for the app or cost of the project? Usually we don't go too deep into pricing model. Yeah, it's usually not part of a standard product design question. I mean, it's kind of like an extra on top of it if you really want to mention the pricing, but usually you would only mention pricing if monetization is the goal. And in this case, monetization is not really in the picture, so you wouldn't care too much about pricing. And for next question, oh, actually, Sid, go ahead.
Sorry, I feel like I keep blocking Nick from learning. But it's,
no,
yeah,
no.
But I have a question about kind of what the interviewer is thinking, and like how are they, what metrics are you assessing the candidate by? Because I saw that you I mean, at the end you kind of said, you know, you could have been more creative, and I was like, that's an interesting statement. I'm curious as to like, what do you think? What is an interview thinking, and like how are they judging the candidate like while they're doing the interview?
Yeah, very good question. So I think this really depends on the company. Some companies like to see more creative answer. For example, Google. Like this is actually a part of the metric that we evaluate candidates based on. But for other companies, you just need to have structure. Like I don't think Microsoft care too much if your solution is too creative. They want to think like a PM and have the organizational skills and speak with structure. So it depends on a company, depends on the company culture, depends on what they're looking for during the interview. And I would say sometimes even depends on like interviewers' personal things they care about, but then that's, again, kind of hard to gauge. So usually they would have like a company metric.
And is there a way to sort of kind of be aware of this sort of cultural differences between companies ahead of time? Like how you were aware, like you said that, hey, Microsoft has a certain way and then Google has this other way. Is the best way to sort of talk to people working there, or is there other ways to kind of learn about these differences in like what they care about?
Yeah, so first I just want to preface it by saying usually if you practice the product design question well, no matter what company you go to, no matter what culture they have, if you're able to do the standard question well, it doesn't really matter. It's like very small nuances. It's not going to make you fail or make you pass an interview. And I mean, I guess if you do well, you will do well. But then for those like smaller things, you need to talk to the people at the company, talk to the PMs, understand their style or what they're looking for in a product design question.